Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness, episode 128, When a Woman Claims Abundance. I'm Cherie Burton, and this topic is near and dear to my heart, as are most of the topics I choose, but especially this one. Being a woman in business now for, almost 15, 20 years, I don't even know now, and an entrepreneurial one at that, has created its own set of challenges and mindset beliefs that I've had to kind of bust through in giving myself my own permission. My guest today is the fabulous Fabienne Fredrickson. She's coming to us from Paris, France. And she's a best-selling author. She's a very renowned business coach for women. She has 20 plus years mentoring women in business and wealth creation. So she does it in a way though that's more about self-honor and soul-based. So she believes that a woman receives abundance when she places herself on the path of self-value. And we're going to talk about the two things that open up for a woman when she starts to rise up and create her own income. Things happen, things open up, things rise. And so those two things we'll talk about. But her book, I'm loving it, The Leverage to Business. It's kind of been a game changer for me in terms of outsourcing things that typically I would believe I had to do on my own. And it's also been really pivotal for me to take stock of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if it's driving me further into overwhelm, or if it's creating more openness, that feminine energy of openness and expansiveness in my heart and with my family. She teaches solo business owners who want to make great impact how to do this in a way that creates profound feelings of safety. A woman who creates her own income, not only is she creating more opportunities for her family financially, but there's an energy that comes in and it allows her to take up more space in her family, in her community, and in the world. It involves so much more than money, this whole talk about abundance. I wanted to bring Fabienne in, and I'm so glad she reached out to me because she really is an expert around being able to get to the heart of why you would want to create money, what you would do with it, what you would set your heart on it to do, and how it will open up massive opportunities and pathways that you wouldn't otherwise be able. There's a lot of women actually right now who are feeling the call to create their own income pathway to give themselves that impact that they want to have in the world and to open up more possibilities to have a greater platform and to be able to serve in higher ways. She has been featured in Forbes, in Entrepreneur Inc., the New York Times, and has a TED Talk as well. So she's the perfect person to talk into this whole feminine, soul-based entrepreneur zone. I just love that I have this connection with her now, and I will be continuing to work with her because I love her energy. I always have mentors in my life to guide me to the next level when I can't see further ahead for myself. And so she is one that I am so excited to continue on the pathway of learning with. Fabienne, how do you say French?
It's actually two syllables. Fab as in fabulous, yen as in Japanese currency. Oh. Fabienne.
Ooh, I really like that. Instead of adding the extra syllable Fabi. And so anyway, from France, from Paris, it's really exciting. My favorite, I like to say my namesake. Because if someone with my name goes into France saying, I'm Cherie, even with my spelling, they would be like, who do you think you are? The translation is like honey or dear or sweetheart, right?
Yeah, exactly. Cherished. Yeah.
Yeah.
I call my father mon papa chérie.
So you and I had a long pre-conversation, I don't even know, 2 months ago or a month ago, and we just clicked, and we're just on the same page with this whole wealth consciousness. Mm-hmm. And not just about money, right? But just the feminine and wealth creation and abundance. So there's that. But I think where we really connected was on this piece of women being kind of coming into this gentle uprising and claiming their space, claiming who they are. And there are things that arise when a woman does that. When she's uprising, other things are uprising. Mm-hmm. But I want to start with talking about France for just a minute, because you said something that struck me. About the differences between how we honor the feminine, maybe here in America, because you have lived here, versus where you are now in
Yeah,
France?
so I have the unique advantage of being half French and half American. So my first 10 years, I was born and raised in France, and I actually had to learn English. And not to give too much of a background, but I think it's contextually speaking, it's interesting. My parents got divorced, and my American mother took me and my sister back to live in the US. And so I spent 36 years in the US, and I'm, pretty much American. We decided a few years ago, my husband, my American husband, my children, and I just moved to Paris for 1 year, and we ended up staying we're on 5 years now. The whole background of this is that French people don't notice what I'm about to tell you, but I see it, having spent my life in between the two countries. Sure. Is that the French revere the feminine. You can tell because it was actually saw this flying into Paris from another 10 days in the US, and everything is about the feminine. You walk into the airport and it says Paris loves you, and it's all about nature, and it's all about the feminine. The buildings are feminine in Paris, where in New York they're very masculine.
Yeah, it's very like detailed architecture, lots of curves, and beautiful art that is very representative of expression.
Yeah. And I was landing into Paris, and I got it, and I texted a friend, and I said, oh my God, it just hit me like a brick wall. The French the women are revered in France, and the feminine is revered in France, and in the US it's tolerated at best. Where I even though I'm a strong woman, you're a strong woman, we're successful in our own right, we still, I believe, have to stand up for ourselves and
prove something, or it feels that way.
Proving. I'm always in my life trying to prove myself there. And there are other ways here too, but this reverence of the feminine, of nature, of downtime, of pleasure. I did a course called Bold Heart Women a couple of years ago about the unapologetic pursuit of pleasure and fulfillment. In France, everything is when a waiter asks you something, he will say, "What will give you pleasure?" I mean, that would never happen. It's like, what do you want, right? What do you want?
Are you soliciting me?
Right. And when I did this course, Cherie, it really bothered the American women in my course. They liked it. They wanted to be in the course. But when I kept bringing up like pleasure, no, let's just focus on your pleasure. And what I noticed is, if you look at the American language, when you put pleasure, it's usually sinful pleasure or guilty pleasure. Where here, pleasure stands on its own. Pleasure is a right. You are entitled here to pleasure. When you're doing something and somebody says, "Oh, why are you doing that?" In France, you'll say, "Because it gives me pleasure." Mm-hmm. And I believe that the US is really masculine.
How do they define pleasure? Is it more about like your senses and nourishment? Because it has a very sexual connotation here.
In America, yeah. Here, it's more the five senses. The French women and American women too, but here much more so. They'll buy themselves flowers. They'll wear the red lipstick. It's all about being visually pleasurable. There is the sexual, sensual, but it's really about beautiful music, beautiful architecture, going to see art. When you go to a person's apartment here for a cocktail party or a tea or a glass of champagne, one of the questions is, what are you reading right now? What exhibits at the museum have you seen? Mm-hmm. What great movies? Where have you traveled? It's not just work. When we eat,
and here it's like, well, what do you do?
What do you do? How much money are you making?
Yeah. What are you achieving? What are your kids achieving? I love what you're saying. Because, one thing I did notice when I was in Europe, and I would say particularly like France, I would love to go to Italy. My husband and I were supposed to go for a 25th wedding anniversary, and COVID hit. then we rescheduled it for this year, and then they canceled it. And so we've been waiting to go to Italy, but I've been throughout parts of Europe, but particularly France. People are very touchy feely, affectionate. You know, I mean, you're going to use the word skin. It's like, how can I touch your skin? How can I hold you close to me? I feel like that's just as, I mean, for like a mother and a child, not just in a romantic way, but people embrace each other. People they don't have that inhibition or that social distancing until COVID.
I'm very affectionate. Yeah, I'm very affectionate with my children and with my husband. And it has made American women curious when they see me with my children. But listen, yesterday I dropped off my son at school, and I'd gotten myself an espresso, and I sat in a park bench for 15 or 20 minutes just because. Yeah. Just the idea of being, not just doing, right? Just because. And I was watching this young couple, maybe 25 years old, literally. They were saying goodbye before work at the entrance of the metro. You know, when you go downstairs, they're there kissing for 10 minutes. kissing, talking. That would never happen in New York.
They're like in no hurry at all.
No.
You know, it's interesting because Americans, some people in other cultures experience Americans as very open and embracing. So when I took my then 16-year-old, he's almost 20 now, to Tokyo, and all over Japan, actually, for some teaching I was doing with my business and emotional workshops and stuff. The women were just staring at us because I would like put my arm around him while we were talking, or, you know, we'd be sitting in eating dinner and everybody's gathered, and he's like putting his head on, and then they're just like, and I had asked my translator what they thought of that, because I could see like they were both intrigued and mildly disturbed, like, and she said no, they could not believe how open and affectionate you were with your son. They weren't offended. They just can't believe it. They were just in awe of that. And
so curiosity.
Yeah. So I do think this cultural thing with senses or sensuality, which we talk a lot about on this podcast, being in your skin, being fully embodied, you know.
All right. I want to say something about this that I think you will appreciate this, and your audience might too. Do I have permission to dive deep into topics?
Come on.
Okay. So I have been thinking about this for a long time, because in that course that I was telling you about it started with be more French, do these things, you know, be attractive to yourself first. And then it went, you know, take care of your sensual needs. You know, most women take care of other people's needs.
Yeah.
And then it went all the way to Mary Magdalene.
Yay! Which you know. Did you even know? Like, she's my thing.
The course just took a totally different direction. Wow. And here's what I got. So I'll just put this on the table for us to play with.
Yeah.
As you may know, Mary, it's I'll just say what I feel.
She was in France.
She landed in France.
Yes.
And she ended up spending 30 plus years in Provence and near the Toulouse region. And when we say Notre Dame, most people think that the Mary we're talking about is the mother of Jesus. But the way I have been playing with the idea is they revered Mary Magdalene so much that they called her Notre Dame, Our Lady. I have chills just sharing.
I do too, actually. I've been there. I've been to that region of France. I did a Sacred Mary Magdalene pilgrimage. Yeah. And I have heard that before, that the Mary that they reference is the French Mary. It is the Mary who came over after the crucifixion.
When you go to Paris, there's Place de la Madeleine. It is this huge plaza, if you will, that's Magdalene. Those little pastries are called Madeleines for a reason. So when I share this with you, as you know, then priestess Magdalene, pleasure,
which people don't equate the priestess with pleasure, because with more orthodox religious connotations, they'll drop the name priestess down, like in my religion of origin, but they don't say what it is. And they certainly wouldn't say that creative sexual energy or power is part of that. Mm-hmm. It's an ancient form of feminine expression and authority. And it definitely has its seed-bedded roots in France and Europe. So I love that, we're talking about, and Egypt. Mm-hmm. But yeah, when you put the word priestess with sexuality, people are just like, oh my gosh, that's culty. That's dark. That's evil. And when you really explore why, anyway, I'm interested in what you have to say on that, because yeah.
So exactly. So then because of her presence and how for 30, 40 years, she taught nature and spirituality and all of the things that were eventually erased from the Bible,
sure.
The what do you call that? The something
Gnostic?
Of yes,
Gospel of Mary. Yeah.
Yes. The what do you call it? The whatever of Magdalene. And it was all of the things that Jesus had learned. I can't believe I'm speaking about this. I never talk about this, but I knew I could with you.
Because my audience, it's already up for us.
Right. So, and the Gospel of Magdalene and everything that Jesus learned in the East, she was then able to bring that to France, and it seeped into Europe. And it was a focus on nature and pleasure and being and sensuality and women being powerful.
Right. Powerful in a way that actually honors the masculine. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting that you're talking about, hey, in your course, you started here, you started discovering this, and then you went deeper, and then all of a sudden it whittled down to Mary Magdalene. Well, I have to tell you, Fabienne, that happened to me in my life. Mm. And, it was wealth creation for a time. It was mothering, all these seasonal aspects. It was really seeing a religious and cultural shame about sexuality and about my worth. Still trying to unpack a lot of that. It's real deep. But when I unlearned who society told me I was, and it's like she was hiding in plain sight, Mary Magdalene, this whole time. Mm-hmm. And so I was through a series of very sacred experiences, just kind of led to France and having some amazing sort of mystical connections there. And then I did a deep dive into studying the text you're referring to, the Gospel of Mary, some of the texts found in Nag Hammadi that were not included in the canonized scripture that we have due to the Roman Church's rule of that time and their flat out suppression and burying of the feminine. And the fact that Mary left with a group of Jesus's followers, left Israel, came over, and landed really on that southern coast of France, that Languedoc region, and then up through Toulouse, to me it's like the other thing hiding in plain sight. It's the other reason that France is so feminine, and that there was already this established goddess history, right? Mm-hmm. That the unhealthy, toxic masculine, the patriarchy was trying to erase and bury, but it seemed to thrive in France. It seemed to thrive in that region. And it's still to this day, as you noted, alive. The Cathars that were considered heretics that were in France, and all of that. It's just, to me, so fascinating that that there was this feminine leader who claimed her own authority, who had direct connection to Jesus, and like you said, all of his teachings that he gathered from the East. There are so many wisdom teachings in the New Testament that people completely look past. But if you go into these Gnostic texts, it's all there. Yeah. Everything is there, the East and the West. And it's beautiful that I think it's a miracle that, and probably for our planet's own advancement and evolution, that they were buried for all that time and not even discovered until like the World War II era. And
Well,
then I was
really
after all of the world religions were already established, East and West. Here we have in mid 1940s, these ancient mystical texts that were circulated at the time of the other scriptures. And they were the exact, in the same way, oral traditions. And it's just fascinating to me that we have them now. And then now religions are like, oh, well, I don't know, but it definitely corroborates this rich history in France and everything that was being taught there and still is.
And there was this fierce protection of the feminine and all that had been the oral tradition that had come from Magdalene. If you think about the troubadours, if you think about the tarot, all of that, if you look at a lot of the art that you see in France, especially Italy too, but
Sure.
they're just neighbors. So
Right.
Italy is right next to Provence, and we will continue to tell the story, even though we're being persecuted, even though the emperor and the Roman Catholic Church just wants to bury everything that is feminine, everything that is.
They hid those texts. They buried them. They said they will survive. These cannot. And here's the other thing I've learned about priestess, Fabienne. The masculine, I guess, structure of having something you can hold, like a text or even artwork or whatever, is both feminine and masculine, but it's mostly it's outside, it's exterior. The priestesses, the ancient priestesses, the records are inside of them. That's how they were able to retain this power and this lineage. And I don't know that it's exactly, you can unequivocally say it was a blood lineage as much as it is an energetic or a spiritual lineage of women and men who are now coming into this planet with wisdom, knowledge. Who knows? There's so many explorations we could go down with past lives or pre-existence or whatever. The idea being that our souls hold these records. Mm-hmm. And my path has been trying to parse out what aligns for me out here in these outer structures, because Jesus did say the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven doesn't come by observation. It doesn't come by what you're looking at. It's not outside of you. He said the kingdom of heaven is within. And that is the teaching right there, the core of it, that Mary took with her and brought over to France. And that's what the Cathars were saying. Hey, look, Roman rule. Hey, all these wars happening in the name of God, all of this separation, all of this violence, all of this piety. It has nothing to do with this kingdom of heaven that Jesus was talking about. It's not, it's inside you. And the churches do not want that.
Well, because then people can't be controlled. Right. Okay, so it's the same thing that's going on now.
Totally.
Right? So there's the way to control a large population is through fear and through separating groups and having them be antagonistic to each other. That's how you control people. If you look at any big moments in history, it was all fear driven, and you control the people by having them worry and pitting them against each other.
Yeah, so and having them question. I think even psychologically, the wounding is deep, like guilt and shame. If we can get them to feel unworthy.
Well, let's talk about the feminine.
Yes. And so that's where it blows open with this rising of the feminine, because here we have, it's kind of how I started my thing. Like, I want to go down this whole uprising of the feminine, but what rises up in us when we try to rise up is this old, ancient, thousands of years, like patriarchal dominance, whatever. It's the suppression of our innate gifts.
I think it's even deeper than suppression, Sherry. I think it's that the feminine has been so demonized. Okay, I explained this to my children once. I explained what happened. And they said, but why? Why would they try to remove the power from the feminine and the priestesses and the witches and everything? It's because when you have the kingdom of heaven within, and when it's in your heart, and when you can heal yourself, you don't need a religious institution.
Right.
And if you don't need a religious institution, and if you don't need a government, then you'll run amok. And you
don't need an academic degree, and you don't need a title, and you don't need to be an expert in anything. That's all masculine.
Because the feminine was so powerful and so dangerous, because priestesses were sexual in nature as well. It was thought to have a power over the masculine that was unhealthy.
And potentially very manipulative. And you could get into the dark sorceress and seductive energy. So I can see that maybe that unleashing of that without healthy boundaries could potentially devastate society.
So the thought was, what's the fastest path to breaking this power? You demonize, you shame. You shame the feminine. You remove its powers. You start saying that woman that was Jesus's wife, no, she was a prostitute.
Yeah.
That the deep shame. This brought me to tears once. I through 2 or 3 years ago, I invited 12 women to spend a week with me in Provence, to talk about creating your best life. Honestly, it was called something around creating your best. And day one afternoon, well, you can see me. I don't know if everybody can see, but
she's got two fists in the air.
I've got my two hands on the steering wheel.
Oh, okay.
And I've got and I'm going this way, teaching them this stuff. And then the universe goes, and really basically takes my steering wheel and goes to the right and says, no, we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about the feminine and the shame of the feminine. And these downloads kept coming down to me. I'm like, I'm talking to my clients. They're at my dining room table. And I look up at the ceiling. I'm like, no, I do not teach this. And then I'm talking to them, and it's like download. I'm like, I am not teaching this. I was angry.
I'm laughing with you because I've been there too. I'm running from it.
Tell me what it is. And I was like, I'm going to teach you about the feminine. I'm going to teach you about the shaming of the feminine and the women. And they're teach us. And I'm like, so let's talk about your shame as a woman. And they're like, I don't feel shame. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, this is so deep that you don't even notice it.
I literally have chills right now because it's so deep that they don't know that they have it.
They don't know. And so I had to.
They've been lulled into a state of denial about actually having these feelings.
A fish in water doesn't realize it's in water and that it's wet. Mm. So I had to explain to them, what about women? Oh my God, where do I even start? What about women who are sold to sexual slavery? What about in China, that if you're going to only have one child, of course you're going to choose the male? What about sexual mutilation for women, that they by all means should not experience pleasure?
Or the veiling of their faces, or the taking of multiple wives, like it's the origin of my religion, and I see it across multiple cultures. Yeah, like bride selling.
Yes.
All that.
As I explained this to them, it was just, they got a look on their face like, oh, because here I was, of course, talking to affluent Western women who don't get it. But what affluent Western women don't realize is that they don't have a choice or a voice in the way that the masculine has it. And they don't realize that they're still asking for permission. I remember talking to a boyfriend of mine when I was 25, and I was talking to him and his friends on a balcony at a party, and he interrupts me. And I said, "Excuse me, I'm not finished." And all his friends were like, "Ooh, she just put you in your place."
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, "Wait, why can't I have a voice? Why can't I finish my sentence?" And this whole quieting of the feminine and no, our opinion doesn't matter. And they're there and you just sit there and look pretty and be quiet. And oh, by all means, don't be wild, don't be passionate, and don't be messy. And I mean messy with like breastfeeding and blood.
Don't bear anything. Don't express it. Just fit this rigid. You brought, that's it. You nailed it right there. Cause I know this is kind of a catchphrase for you. And I love that it rhymes. The two things that come up for women, whether they're trying to make wealth, create wealth, whether they're trying to establish a space in their community, like you were trying to do, or have a thought, whether they're trying to own, step into a business role, or just be themselves, that uprising. The two things that come up is they have to claim their voice. What is it? Voice and choice.
Yeah.
It's the voice. So explain the choice part. So I get the voice part.
Okay. So I'm a business coach, have been for 21 years. I help women get to 10K a month consistently. And then once they're there, I get them to $1 million. It's what I do. Okay? It doesn't sound like from everything that we've talked about, but because I've worked with tens of thousands of women, I hear what they say when they're crying with me on a Zoom. I hear what they say when it's a ballroom of 400 women and this woman after woman comes up at the mic and she says, "If I do this, Fabienne, I'm going home to a fight." And I'm thinking, why is she going home to a fight? She's got her own business. It's her own money. But not really, because when women don't make enough of their own money, they are not respected even in their own homes. And we could say, and I know this could be like very triggering to people.
You could literally drop the mic there. I interviewed Amy McPhee-Olivest, who has a podcast called Breaking Down Patriarchy. She brought up the exact same point, historically speaking. It's been this way since these gifts were suppressed with women, that they became the caretakers of the home, which is great and fine. A lot of us love doing that.
I have 3 kids. I love my babies.
Whatever. But ultimately, if she just does that role, and I'm not diminishing for women that just do that role. I did that for a very long time with my older kids. But she's now in a child role with her husband because she becomes his dependent if he is the only source of their income. So,
right. And it is without, because it's been such a reality in our society for so long, we don't realize the power struggle there. Because when I found myself saying this to my children, I didn't even mean to. It's like, it's so deep, but they said, "Why can't I do this, Mom?" And I said, "Because this is not your home. This is my home. I pay for it. You live here." And I know how to, I could see
my dad used to say, like dad used to say that, right? But
but it was when you have your own apartment, when you make your own money, you do whatever you want. But right now, this is how it works here. But in saying that, I realized that that's how women are treated. They don't have an equal voice because they don't contribute equally, financially speaking. When it comes to making a choice about a car or a vacation or this or that, they can say what they want, but in the end, the person who makes the money makes the decision.
And that gets brought into that right there gets brought into a lot of religions. So it's like, unknowingly, or I would say even intentionally, the patriarchy is like, hey, women, your role is at home. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, if there's like you said, if there's a decision to made, your husband is to preside. And so he is the one who is has the ultimate say. as if that mantle rests upon him. It's not just in my religion of origin, Mormonism. This is throughout. This is like old Victorian era stuff all the way back. It's still perpetuated. And so, yeah, like choice, women having a pathway, women who, like, let's just say they've been married for, X amount of years, and then they decide that they're going to get a divorce for whatever reason, or their husband passes away. And all of a sudden they have no resources.
Let me tell you a story about this woman who sent me, I was launching the Leveraged Business book a couple of weeks ago, and she sent me a DM on Instagram and she said, "Hi, I see that you're in Provence. I live in Provence too. I'm an American. I married a French man. I just want to know if your book is right for me because I don't yet make 100K. And I said, "Well, tell me more." And she said, "Well, I fell in love. I moved to France. We had 3 kids. They're now, 19, 23, 25. And he's cheated on me. So we separated. But 25 years ago, I stopped my career to be with the kids, to support him in his career. Now he's left to be with the other woman. I'm left in France, no money, no career, no job. I don't know what to do." And it's this, the whole choice piece, Cherie, is the idea of, when you make, let's say you make 5, 10, I want to start a revolution of women making 10K a month every month. Okay. Being self-employed. Okay. But I'm a business coach to entrepreneurs. So of course I'll say being self-employed, but I don't care where you make the 10K a month. The whole idea is that if you want to leave that corporate job, you're making money, so you can. You have a choice. If you want to leave that terrible marriage, you can. You are not.
You have options.
Economically imprisoned. What the thing that I really want to start a global conversation about is the economic imprisonment of women. That when I just did a whole bunch of surveys, and I did a Zoom this week with several women who told me their stories of not having a choice, not having a voice, even when I have a friend who lives in one of the most affluent counties in the US. And she lives in probably a $5 million home, and her husband retired early, and they're rolling in the money, if you want, with financial business. But he tells her, your nutrition business, like, don't grow it too much because I want to be able to travel with you. And she used to be, she has a master's. She used to be on Wall Street.
She wants to do it. She wants
to do it for her own fulfillment. So it's a great guy. They have plenty. They're very affluent. They're lovely, lovely people, but she doesn't really have a choice.
Right. And I think in defense too of these good men who love their wives and want their wives to ultimately be fulfilled, they're still stuck in their own programming around that. It's the same thing that we're talking about with women who are asleep to the shame that they actually carry around, or maybe the denials that they're inhibit. Same with these wonderful men who love their wives, who love their mothers, if you will, but they've just never had anyone sit down and explain what a healthy feminine, how she expresses.
They bought into the narrative, hook, line, and sinker.
The traditional roles. Yeah.
Yes. So when a woman makes her own money, so this is what I always say. And some people like kind of raise an eyebrow at me sometimes when I say this. And I'm like, I don't need Derek Fredrickson.
Is that your husband's name?
That is my husband.
Okay.
I don't need him.
Yeah.
I choose him every single day. I make my own money, lots of it. And believe me, I work. It's not like I'm sitting here.
Right. But you love what you do.
I love what I do.
The money flows.
Right.
But you are not dependent.
No. And the thing is, I choose him every day. And I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had with women who they look for business coaching because they want to make their own money, because they want to be able to leave if they need to. And There are countless women who are imprisoned because they don't make their own money, and so they
can't leave
toxic relationships.
It's not unlike the movies we see in the early, 17th, 18th century movies we see, where women, if they would be destitute if they didn't marry into money. Period. Yeah. We're, like you said, it's still happening. They're still in prison. Women are still chattel. Now, okay, women listening, don't take me wrong on this. All right. I have a mother who stayed home with us, and she had lots of children, and she was a stay-at-home mom. She was super resourceful though. Like if she wanted something, she would find a way to make some money to get it. She would do some sewing projects or whatever. And she was poetry contests and whatever she needed to do. Amazing. And our religion was such that women were really discouraged from having a career of any kind. And so it's shifted a lot. It's very open, but I decided early on that I was going to make my own money. And I got a college degree and I married my husband. And, by the time I graduated college, we had our first child, and I started having children, and I'm like, oh, I can see my what now? Like I love, eat, breathe, love my children. But that's a whole other story of wanting to have more children and loving them and having this tension. It is what it is. And I could do a whole podcast episode on it. But when it came to advocating for myself to actually make money, I cannot tell you what I was up against. First, it was my family of origin. Now they think it's amazing. They've grown in that, like my parents and siblings and stuff. My younger sister joined me on this path, and we both decided we were going to create wealth, and we did. And we were traveling the world, and we were having all these experiences, and it triggered so many people, especially women. Not some men, I will be honest, like they didn't know what to do with me. They still don't, but mostly women. And I think the reason it was triggering them was because I was doing what they wish they could do. And I'm not saying that in an ego-based way. It's just, I wish I could, well, who does she think she is? Like, I wish I could go like travel the world and take my kids and do these things and have this beautiful home. And those things are not the soul of it for me. The soul of it for me was my emancipation, my inner authority, my sovereignty. I didn't realize that consciously, but that's where my soul was taking me, is this freedom, this unfettering from the traditional into expansiveness and options, as you're saying, choice. And I've always loved to be a speaker and have the voice and everything, but I'm still in this, space where I'm like, I love beautiful things. I love having options. I love humanitarian work. I love doing, if I didn't have my own pathway and had created that for myself with complete ambition and focus in my masculine side, then, I just don't think I would have the spirit. I wouldn't have been able to go to France and do these pilgrimages. And like, you know what I mean? I had pathways open to me that made me a more spiritual, open person. I feel like these cloistered, bubbled communities where they keep women in these traditional roles, women that I love, and I'm not judging. I'm just saying it's the tradition. They're in this bubble, and they don't feel like there's any other choice but to stay in that bubble. So what would you say? As you can tell, I'm like really inflamed and impassioned around this. I don't think my path is for everyone. Okay. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. Same here. And I could see how there's a lot to judge from what I'm saying, but I really don't mean it that way. What I mean is opening up options of ways to think about things.
Yes.
The really looking at, the brand, I'm building a brand called Fabienne.com, where all of these personal growth and development, my book, Embrace Your Magnificence, will live there. All the Bold Heart Woman, Bold Heart Life, Bold Heart whatever will live there. And the umbrella for that is not settling for anything less than absolutely anything, everything, and that you can have anything you want. You can have it all, whatever all means to you. And for you, it might be, living a very affluent lifestyle and jet setting around the world. And for another person, it's van life.
And down by the river in a van.
Exactly. And it could be that you have 8 children, and it could be that you choose, because for you, not having children is bliss. Whatever it is, you get to have it. But what I'm always interested in is, who are you really? What is the fullest expression of who you really are in the world? If you're not listening to the narrative, if you are listening to your heart, I'm always telling women, put your ear to your heart and listen hard. What is your heart telling you? As opposed to the like I keep saying, the narrative, the tradition. I love to be traditional about some things. I took my husband's name. I cook every night. Right now I have some salted caramel meringues in the oven. Like, I love that stuff, right? But it's because I choose it, Sherry. I choose this.
Sure.
I choose. And I choose to work, and I choose to have a voice, and I choose to.
Okay, so how do you choose that? Probably easier in France than it is here, without guilt, without the guilty, sinful pleasure mentality. Because I'm telling you, I am up against this right and left. This is the thing that I think is triggering the women.
Okay. So I have this thing. I have just decided, and I had to go through a whole self-esteem journey, because I was such a people pleaser. I had such low self-worth and self-esteem that I got myself into and stayed into 2 abusive relationships. And Embrace Your Magnificence is my whole journey of how I went from the lowest depths of self-esteem to creating a life that I love. But here's what I got is, when you can, it's not even about self-love. When you can accept yourself as is, warts and all, if you can accept the shameful things you did, the shameful things that were done to you, if you can accept the shameful things you said and the shameful things that were said to you, if you can be okay with who you are, then it doesn't really freaking matter what somebody thinks about you or says to you, because in the end, you're okay with you. And I tell our ladies, our clients all the time, if you could just feel worthy of being here and just taking up a little bit more space in the world, no matter, the haters will come, the trolls on the internet, the people seats. Oh, they're there, and they're loud,
and they're just projecting their own.
They're projecting their own thing, and it's always keyboard confidence, right? It's like, I will never tell you that
to my face and say that.
Right. Yeah. So here's the point: is if you can be okay with you, there's a point at which I would never have said that I could love myself, but I accepted myself with all my imperfections. Because I'm with myself 24/7 for all my life, that even though I work with my husband, parent with my husband, do everything with my husband, he's in the next room, he always is, we love being together, he doesn't even know who I really am, just as I don't know anybody else, even my children. If I can be okay with me, then it doesn't matter what they say, because at the end of the day, I'm with me. And so that said, criticize me if you will, judge me harshly if you will, But if I'm okay with me, I will say what I want to say because I'm okay with me. It's a long way of explaining it, but that's how I'm not worried about being excommunicated, worried about being rejected, felt guilty because I like me.
You're who you are. And that's a beautiful place for us to wrap. I honor you for holding space for women for this kind of like massive, abundant creation, because you're not just scaling it at, like you said, 10,000, right? You're going bigger with that. And money is just a benign resource. You and I know that it has a neutral charge. People put their own perceptions on it. It is what it is. But and that scripture, like where your money is, where your treasure is, your heart is also. So if your money bag, if your money treasure is, like you said, look in your heart and look hard, or whatever you said it, put your ear to your heart and listen hard. If your heart's treasure is those beautiful feminine things we've been talking about, right? Inclusivity, sensuality, beauty, and worthiness, expression, nurturing, nourishing. If that's where your heart is, and you put your treasure there, then whatever wealth creation you generate will have a completely different energy than the wealth your husband generates. Bless him, right? Because it's you. It's where you're putting your intention and your purity of heart. And Marianne Williamson has a quote that I memorized really early in my business path. Marianne Williamson, she's in the law, what is it called? The Law of Divine Compensation, her little book. She said, purity of heart is the greatest engine of wealth creation.
Ooh.
And it's just yummy, isn't it?
Yummy, because wealth is an expander, right? So if you're a jerk, it makes you more of a jerk. If you're really
like throwing gasoline on the fire of whatever you are. So let's be the fire of let's be the fire of the Magdalene. The Magdalene flame, they call it. Is just this sovereign fire. Like, I know who I am, and what you're saying, the way that you came about that was just generous, radical self-acceptance. Okay. Warts and all, good, bad, ugly, whatever I've done, whatever's been done to me, this is who I am. And that is where the divine and the humanity meet. And that is that preservation of your dignity, which, okay, thank you, Fabienne. And tell people where they can find you. I know we've been talking about your book, Embrace Your Magnificence, which is your soulful journey and your vulnerable story around, but you have other places people can reach you, especially, I think you said on Instagram is one of your favorite.
Yeah, Instagram, you can just find me at Fabienne, Fabienne. It's just about connecting. Let's continue this conversation. They can DM me. I especially the Embrace Your Magnificence. If you end up getting it, if you're listening here, I would love to know what your breakthrough, your transformation, your journey is after reading it. That's what I'm super interested in. And Cherie, I just think you are magnificent. This went by in just a nanosecond.
I know, didn't it? Like, thank you. Thank you so much. I love how synchronous my connection with Fabienne is. We didn't even know each other's experiences and encounters with Mary Magdalene, and how that consciousness kind of just showed up on our paths as we were working with other women. When you do meet other women of purpose who get it in terms of how to influence through your own self-empowerment that's authentic and not trumped up or trying to make a dollar or whatever, but it's true to who you are in your soul. That is an abundant place to be. So you can find her work on boldheart.com. I think she mentioned in the episode, she has another book besides the one I told you about, The Leveraged Business. She has another book, Embrace Your Magnificence, that details her awakening. Personally, I'm going to be going through her mindset retreat at the end of June, and I'm excited to just have 3 days to just connect in to sort of up level my own thinking and how I show up in the world and what I'm about. also how I can create more abundance on all levels by just getting still and sitting with who I am and allowing the energy and essence of who I am and my own divine soul to flow through me as a gift and expression to the world. That's how I want to do business. That's how I want to do life. And I would challenge you before we meet again next Wednesday to get clearer and clearer on what you love, what moves you, what drives you, what you desire, because that is holy and that is sacred. Have a glorious week, and we'll talk to you next time on Women Seeking Wholeness.